My husband's affair led to divorce, but when he tried to take my kids away, his own parents sided with me. Now he wants to come back, but I've moved on. I'm Sarah, 34 female, and my husband is Mark, 36 male. We've been married for 12 years and have 2 kids, Tom, 10 male, and Emma, 8 female. Our story began in college, where we met during our sophomore year. I was studying marketing, and Mark was pursuing a degree in business administration. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for 90s sitcoms and dreams of traveling the world. After graduation, we both landed entry-level jobs in our respective fields. We dated for 3 years before Mark proposed on a surprise weekend getaway to the beach where we had our first vacation together. It was a magical moment, and I couldn't wait to start our life together. We got married in a small ceremony surrounded by close family and friends. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. We were young, in love, and excited about building our future. We both worked hard, saving up for a house and planning for a family. When I found out I was pregnant with Tom, we were over the moon. Mark was so supportive throughout the pregnancy, attending every doctor's appointment and even learning to cook so I wouldn't have to. After Tom was born, we decided that I would stay home with him. It was a tough decision financially, but we believed it was best for our family. 2 years later, Emma came along, completing our family. Those early years were exhausting but wonderful. Mark worked hard to support us, often putting in extra hours at the office. I threw myself into motherhood, joining mommy groups and organizing playdates. As the kids grew older, I started feeling the itch to return to work. But every time I brought it up, Mark would reassure me that we were doing fine on his salary and that the kids needed me at home. I pushed my career aspirations aside, focusing on being the best mom I could be. Our marriage was great for the first decade. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always managed to work through our issues. We made time for date nights, family vacations, and even the occasional weekend getaway, just the two of us. Things started to change about 2 years ago. Mark got a big promotion at work. He became the regional sales manager, which meant more responsibility, longer hours, and frequent business trips. At first, I was thrilled for him. This was what he had been working towards for years. I still remember the night he came home with the news. He was beaming, talking a mile a minute about his new duties and the opportunities this would bring for our family. We celebrated with a bottle of champagne after the kids went to bed, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But as the weeks turned into months, I started feeling the strain of Mark's new position. He was often gone before the kids woke up and home after they were in bed. When he was home, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone or laptop for work emails. I tried to be understanding. I knew this job was important to him and to our family's financial security. I took on more responsibilities at home, trying to shield the kids from the changes in our family dynamic. But inside, I was struggling. The loneliness crept in slowly. At first, it was just a twinge when I'd see other families together at the park on weekends while Mark was at the office. Then it grew into a constant ache, especially during those long nights when I'd go to bed alone, not knowing when Mark would finally make it home. One night, after Mark had been away for a week-long business trip, I couldn't take it anymore. As soon as he walked through the door, exhausted from his flight, I broke down. Through tears, I told him how lonely and neglected I felt, how the kids missed him, how our family was drifting apart. Mark seemed genuinely surprised and upset. He apologized profusely, promising to make more time for me and the kids. He said he'd talked to his boss about reducing his travel and working from home more often. For a while, things improved. Mark made an effort to be home for dinner more often, and we even started having regular date nights again. But then, about 6 months ago, I noticed Mark becoming distant again. The late nights at the office returned, as did the constant checking of his phone. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying it was just a busy period at work and things would calm down soon. I tried to believe him, but something felt off. The way he angled his phone away from me when texting, the sudden need for privacy when taking calls, the vague answers about his whereabouts, it all added up to a knot of suspicion in my stomach. Last month, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. While Mark was in the shower, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked his phone. My hands were shaking as I entered his passcode, our anniversary date, which somehow made what I found even more painful. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. There were flirty text messages between Mark and someone named Alex. From the context, it was clear they had been seeing each other for at least a few months. There were messages about secret meetups, inside jokes, and even a few inappropriate pictures. I felt like I couldn't breathe. All those nights I'd been home with the kids, thinking Mark was working late, he had been with her. All those business trips that ran long, had they all been lies? I confronted Mark as soon as he got out of the shower. At first, he tried to deny it, claiming Alex was just a coworker and I was misinterpreting their friendship. But when I showed him the messages I'd seen, he crumbled. He admitted to having an affair with Alex, 29 female, a new employee in his department. Through his tears, Mark explained how it started. Alex had joined the company about 8 months ago. They started having lunch together occasionally, just as friends. But over time, their relationship grew closer. He swore he never meant for it to happen, that he still loved me and the kids more than anything. Mark begged for forgiveness. He swore it was over and that he'd end all contact with Alex immediately. He offered to quit his job, go to couples counseling, anything to save our marriage. He talked about how he'd gotten caught up in the excitement of his new position, how the long hours and stress had made him vulnerable to temptation. He promised it would never happen again. I was too shocked and hurt to process everything he was saying. I told him I needed space and left to stay with my sister. I've been here for the past week, trying to clear my head. Mark has been calling and texting nonstop, pleading for another chance. Our kids are confused and upset, asking when I'm coming home. Part of me wants to try and work things out for the sake of our family. We've built a life together over the past 12 years, and despite everything, I still love him. We've been through so much together, the struggles of early marriage, the joy of becoming parents, the challenges of balancing work and family. Can I really throw all of that away? But another part of me is furious and heartbroken. How can I ever trust him again? Every time I close my eyes, I see those messages, imagine him with her. How many times did he lie to my face? How many family dinners did he miss to be with her? How can I go back to sharing a bed with someone who betrayed me so deeply? I'm torn between giving our marriage another shot and filing for divorce. I don't want to break up our family, but I also don't want to be with someone who could hurt me like this. I keep thinking about all the sacrifices I made for our family, putting my career on hold, dedicating myself to raising our kids. Was it all for nothing? My friends are divided. Some say I should leave him, that one's a cheater, always a cheater. Others say marriages can survive infidelity if both partners are committed to working through it. I just don't know what to do. I'm worried about how a divorce would affect our kids. They adore their dad, and I don't want to take that away from them. Tom is at an age where he's starting to understand adult relationships, and I worry about the example this sets for him. Emma is still so young and innocent, how do I explain to her why Daddy isn't living with us anymore? Financially, I'm in a tough spot. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past 8 years. Mark has always been the breadwinner. If we divorce, I'd have to re-enter the workforce, which is a daunting prospect after being out of it for so long. My marketing skills are rusty, and the industry has changed so much. Would anyone even want to hire me? I'm looking for advice, especially from anyone who's been in a similar situation. Should I try to salvage my marriage? Or is it time to cut my losses and start over? How do I even begin to make this decision? How do I balance my own hurt and anger with what's best for our kids? I feel lost and overwhelmed, and any guidance would be appreciated. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. Your words really helped me gain some perspective during this difficult time. After much soul-searching and several long conversations with my sister and closest friends, I decided to give Mark one last chance to save our marriage. It wasn't an easy decision, and I had many doubts, but I felt I owed it to our history and our children to at least try. I moved back home, but with strict conditions. Mark had to cut all contact with Alex, find a new job, and we'd start couples counseling immediately. I also insisted on complete transparency, open phone policy, shared passwords, the works. Mark agreed to everything without hesitation, seeming genuinely relieved that I was willing to try. The first few days back home were awkward and tense. The kids were happy to have me back but confused about why I had left in the first place. We decided to be honest with them, in an age-appropriate way. We explained that Daddy had made a big mistake that hurt Mommy's feelings, but we were going to try to work things out. It was a difficult conversation, but I believe in being as truthful as possible with our children. Mark started his job search immediately and landed a new position within 2 weeks. It was a lateral move in terms of salary and responsibilities, but at a different company. He seemed relieved to be out of the environment where the affair had taken place. We started couples counseling, seeing a therapist twice a week. It was intense and often emotionally draining, but it was helping us communicate better. We talked about the underlying issues in our marriage, my feelings of neglect, Mark's work stress, our lack of quality time together. We also discussed strategies for rebuilding trust and intimacy. At home, Mark was attentive and helpful. He took on more responsibilities with the kids, giving me some much-needed time for myself. He was patient with my mood swings, understanding when I'd suddenly get angry or burst into tears. He answered all my questions about the affair honestly, no matter how painful. For the first couple of weeks, things seemed to be improving. We were talking more openly than we had in years. Mark was making a real effort to be present, both physically and emotionally. We even had a few moments of genuine laughter and connection, which gave me hope that maybe we could get through this. However, about 3 weeks into our reconciliation attempt, I discovered something that shattered any hope of saving our marriage. I was doing laundry, a mundane task that had become almost soothing in its normalcy, when I found a receipt in Mark's pocket for a hotel room from just 2 days earlier. My hands shook as I stared at the piece of paper. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Surely there was an innocent explanation. Maybe it was an old receipt he'd forgotten about. Maybe it was for a work meeting. I tried to calm myself down, to give Mark the benefit of the doubt as our therapist had encouraged. When Mark got home from work that evening, I confronted him about the receipt. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked him to explain. He looked panicked for a moment before composing himself. He claimed it was for a work meeting, that his new company sometimes used hotel conference rooms for client presentations. But as I pressed him for details, which client, who else was there, why he hadn't mentioned it, his story began to unravel. Finally, unable to keep up the lie, he admitted the truth, he was still seeing Alex. I felt like the ground had disappeared from under my feet. Not only had he continued the affair, but he had lied to my face repeatedly while pretending to work on our marriage. All the counseling sessions, all the heart-to-heart talks, all his promises, it had all been an act. Mark tried to explain, saying he had genuinely wanted to end things with Alex, but found it harder than he expected. He claimed he was confused, that he had feelings for both of us. He begged for another chance, swearing that this time he would really end it. But I was done listening to his lies and excuses. I told Mark to pack his bags and leave. He pleaded and cried, saying it was a moment of weakness and that it would never happen again. But I couldn't hear it anymore. The trust was irreparably broken. After Mark left, I sat on our bed, my bed now, I suppose, and cried for what felt like hours. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the future I had imagined for our family, for the pain our children would go through. But beneath the sadness, I felt a glimmer of something else, relief. The constant anxiety of wondering if Mark was being faithful was gone. I knew where I stood now. The next day, I called a lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. It was a surreal experience, sitting in a sterile office discussing the dissolution of my marriage in legal terms. But it also felt empowering to take control of the situation. Telling the kids was the hardest part. We sat them down together and explained that Daddy would be moving out permanently. Tom got angry, yelling that he hated both of us before running to his room and slamming the door. Emma just cried, clinging to me and asking if it was her fault. It broke my heart to see them hurting, but I knew this was better than living in a home filled with lies and betrayal. Surprisingly, I've found strength I didn't know I had. I've started looking for job opportunities and am considering going back to school to update my skills. My sister has been incredibly supportive, offering to help with childcare while I get back on my feet. Mark has been alternating between begging for another chance and getting angry, accusing me of breaking up our family. But I'm standing firm in my decision. I deserve better, and so do our kids. It's going to be a long and difficult road ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since I last updated, and life has been a whirlwind. The divorce proceedings are underway, and it's been more challenging than I expected. At first, Mark seemed willing to cooperate for an amicable split. We had a civil conversation about dividing assets and creating a custody arrangement that would work for everyone. I felt cautiously optimistic that we could get through this without too much drama. However, things took a turn for the worse when we started discussing the details. Mark suddenly became combative, especially when it came to custody and financial support. He's now fighting for full custody of the kids, claiming that I'm an unfit mother because I've been out of the workforce for so long. His accusations are ridiculous and hurtful. He's painting a picture of me as an incompetent homemaker who can't possibly take care of the children without his support. It's as if the last decade of my life, dedicated to raising our family, means nothing. My lawyer assures me that his claims won't hold up in court, but it's still incredibly stressful. The kids are struggling with the changes. Tom has been acting out at school, getting into fights and talking back to teachers. His grades are slipping, and he's become withdrawn at home. Emma, on the other hand, has become very clingy. She has trouble sleeping alone and often crawls into my bed in the middle of the night, crying for her dad. I've enrolled them both in counseling to help them cope with the situation. It's heart-wrenching to see them hurting like this, but I'm trying to stay strong for them. We have a lot of talks about feelings, and I'm doing my best to reassure them that both their dad and I love them, even if we're not together anymore. On a positive note, I've managed to secure a part-time job at a local marketing firm. It's not much, just 20 hours a week doing social media management for small businesses, but it's a start. My boss is a divorced mom herself and has been incredibly understanding about my situation. She's allowing me flexible hours to accommodate the kids' schedules. I'm also taking some online courses to brush up on my skills. Digital marketing has changed so much since I left the workforce, and I'm determined to catch up. Balancing work, studies, and single parenting is tough, but I'm managing. It feels good to be using my brain for something other than meal planning and laundry schedules. Financially, things are tight. Mark is dragging his feet on spousal and child support, claiming he can't afford it due to his new job paying less. My lawyer is fighting for me, but the legal fees are adding up quickly. I've had to dip into my savings, which is scary, but I'm trying to stay positive. Last week, I ran into Alex at the grocery store. It was awkward and tense. She tried to apologize, saying she didn't know Mark was married when their relationship started. I'm not sure if I believe her, but I told her I didn't want to hear it. I'm focused on moving forward, not dwelling on the past. Seeing her brought up a lot of emotions, but I'm proud of how I handled it. I didn't cause a scene or break down. I just walked away, head held high. Mark's parents have been surprisingly supportive of me. They're disappointed in their son's behavior and have offered to help with the kids whenever needed. It's a small comfort in this difficult time. Mark's mom even offered to testify on my behalf if the custody battle goes to court, which I appreciate but hope won't be necessary. I've also started reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. A support group for divorced moms has been particularly helpful. It's comforting to talk to people who understand what I'm going through. We meet every week, and it's become a lifeline for me. Hearing their stories and how they've rebuilt their lives gives me hope for my own future. Update 3. 6 months have passed since my last update, and I'm happy to report that things are looking up. The divorce was finalized last month, and while it was emotionally draining, I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. The custody battle ended up being less dramatic than I feared. After several mediation sessions, Mark and I agreed on joint custody, with me having primary physical custody. He gets the kids every other weekend and one evening during the week. It's not ideal, but it's working for now. The kids are slowly adjusting to the new normal. Tom is doing better in school. His counselor has been a great help, teaching him coping mechanisms for his anger and frustration. Emma is still having some separation anxiety, but it's improving. She's made a new best friend at school, which has been a positive distraction. I've been promoted to a full-time position at work, which has been a huge boost both financially and for my self-esteem. My boss has continued to be incredibly understanding about my situation. I'm even leading a small team now, which is both exciting and terrifying. Mark and I are learning to co-parent civilly. It's not always easy, especially when he brings Alex to events involving the kids, but we're making it work for Tom and Emma's sake. We've set up a shared online calendar for the kids' activities, which helps minimize direct communication and potential conflicts. I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, but it feels good to know that there's life after divorce. I met a nice guy, David, at a local coffee shop. We've been on a few dates, and while I'm not ready for anything serious, it's nice to have adult conversations that don't revolve around work or kids. My relationship with my sister has grown even stronger through all of this. She's been my rock, offering childcare, a shoulder to cry on, and tough love when I needed it. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without her. I'm also proud of how I've grown as a person. I've learned to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, and to prioritize my own happiness. It hasn't been easy, and there are still days when I feel overwhelmed, but overall, I'm in a much better place than I was a year ago. Looking back, I'm amazed at how far I've come. This journey has been incredibly difficult, but I've discovered a strength in myself that I never knew existed. To anyone going through a similar situation, remember that you deserve happiness and respect. Don't settle for less. It may be a long and painful process, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. As for the future, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm focusing on being the best mom I can be, advancing in my career, and maybe, when the time is right, finding love again. But for now, I'm content with the life I'm building for myself and my children. It may not be the life I had planned, but it's a good one, and it's ours.